Yeah. So last week we did kind of the feel good, mood lifter, mood booster segment. This week, which is really the yang to last week's yin, we're titling it Heavy Therapy, which I love. Tone, you came up with that. Love that name. And it's really, we're moving away from like the feel good type albums. This is an extension of that, where at the end of the day, these albums kind of put you in that same space at the end. It kind of, whether it's a release or gets you in the right headspace, but it's on the heavy side. So
Yep.
we each came up with we'll probably do two apiece. So Nate,
Nice.
what you got?
I was gonna pick something different, but I'm actually gonna go with this one just because there's I wanted to piggyback off of what Tone was saying with Donnie's Basement. You got a
No,
guess?
you're gonna steal one from me, I think.
Oh shit!
I got three though, so good. You're good. Go for it. I do have
Any
a guess.
guess?
Yeah, the
Guesses?
fragile.
Huh?
The fragile.
Yeah, I know it's kind of obvious when I said that, just because we listened to the shit out of that
Yeah.
album.
Yeah.
And I brought this up. Actually, speaking of the first thing that came to mind, this is the first album that came to mind. Um, Mainly because it's a double album, so there's a lot of songs, and I don't know. I think it might be the core album, and there's maybe two others, actually, two that I picked that kind of fit this like medication for like I need an outlet to almost help me, channel this frustration, anger, whatever. I'm a pretty level-headed person, but like many people, I have frustration issues and so forth. So, um, metal music is definitely my outlet, and another, I guess, positive throw pitch to the music industry is the fact that metal music is very much so therapeutic, and so this is a good segment because this album, Nine Inch Nails, The Fragile, is so dark and so deep, and the lyrics are pretty heavy. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, I dissected this album so much over the last 20 years or so. But listening to this album, Tone and Donnie's Basement, and then I'd go home and listen to it more. It's like it talk about like Dead of the Winter album. This is just such a solid work of art, and it helps you. You get through it, and then you listen to this album through, and it's kind of up and down. It's all over the place tempo wise. So yeah, the Nine Inch Nails, The Fragile, it really was the album that kind of hooked me in. I had listened to other stuff previous and post The Fragile, but this album just like, I don't know, it just really hooked me in. I was like, nice, I totally understand this like industrial music, metal, crazy, pretty somber and depressing lyrics to an extent. But I think we have also talked about where Trent Reznor is today, and he's a father of like four kids. He scores films, so there's a weird kind of nerd aspect to it where that you can kind of come out the other side because the music's very honest, but the fact that you can be a working professional and have a family, and this music is kind of like an autobiography of Trent Reznor. So to come out the other side, I mean, he was dealing with some serious drug addiction issues too, unfortunately. I never dealt with that personally, but um, it gives you hope, to know that on an autobiography standpoint that this guy made it. He put out this music. Maybe it helped him. It definitely helped me. And I didn't go nearly what the struggles that he went through just to listen to the lyrics alone. But I mean, I think we talked about maybe 4 weeks ago or so that I would put this album on as like a backdrop to like the news because I had a hard time digesting this. I try and I'm a naturally optimistic person. So when I see things that are basically catering to what looks like an apocalypse in real time, it's hard to go about my casual and happy self. So having a Nine Inch Nails Fragile album to almost help digest difficult times makes me better and makes me more human and interestingly enough, this album is timeless in that sense that I can use this as different ways to grow. And I love this album. And I think it's the reason I've seen him so many times. And I consider Trent Reznor an absolute idol of mine for sure.
Yeah, and I mean it kicks you in the face on the first track, right? Somewhat
Yeah.
damaged. I mean, oh, holy crap, that's a heavy song. I remember listening to that song in my bedroom living at home still because I hadn't moved out just yet. I was still a little younger, and blasting that song, and my mom being like, "Are you okay?" Because it's just not a happy song, and there's a lot of non-happy songs on this record. But it is like you said, it's definitely all over the map as far as soundscapes go. It's not just that heavy negative, bring you down stuff too. There's some really beautiful pieces like La Mer, which is just a piano instrumental. Yeah, there's some cool, really, it's a great double album. I'm glad it's 2 and not 1. I love Wearing This Together Now. It's probably my favorite Nine Inch Nails song. And the video is really cool too.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, you didn't steal mine, Nate, but we're in the same vein. So I've got more of that autobiographical Reznor coming up for you shortly. So
nice.
Swan, what about you?
Well, I was going to say, I mean, here you are 20 years later, 20 plus, or whatever it is, still talking about it. And like you said, your mom was like, well, what is this? And for you, it was an outlet. And clearly we're doing this segment, so it's the top of that category, right?
Yep.
I would say for me, I was probably a late bloomer with this album. I did not get into it in real time. I had a college, one of my college roommates was a big Nine Inch Nails head, and actually he's the one that kind of really pushed me to go to that Orpheum show that we talked about from 05. Yep. And so I was, kind of late to the party, and but I like it. For me, it was one of those albums that you had to be in the right mood, which kind of fits this. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's a vibe.
Yeah, I would put it on if I was not in a great space. And again, you're talking about winter. You're talking about none of your friends. We got a handful of friends still kicking around. Maine in the winter when it's cold and damp and dank and all that fun stuff. So you're putting on music like this to kind of get you by. And use it occasionally to work out, use it occasionally to drive or go for a run, just to kind of, flush everything out and make yourself feel a little bit better at the end of it. So, another kind of interesting fact about that, he was a label mate sort of with Dr. Dre, right? Interscope owned Nothing Records, and Even Deeper was produced by Dre, which is on the first side, I think. Yeah,
that's
so
nerdery
there's a
deep
credit.
Cut. I didn't know that.
There's a Dr. Dre sighting on that. So, and that's kind of that hip hoppy type beat.
Yeah.
So that's a cool song.
Yeah, it's got like an echo reverb on it, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And I want to say that this mirrors Lance Mercer, his take on Alice in Chains, where you kind of have to be in for it on this one. Right, you got to kind of understand that, like, you can't just throw this on casually. I mean, you can, but it's so deep. It's like watching a movie about the Holocaust or something. Like, it's pretty. You have to it's not entertainment really. It's really I guess for this, it's a therapy session maybe, but it's an album that's pretty. It takes you in, so you can't just like throw it on, play a song, and switch it out. Like this is a one you put in, and luckily it's a double album, so you're putting in the whole album, and you're kind of being fully absorbed and immersed into this full work of art. So yeah, man, Fragile, great album. I didn't want to pick it, but it just kept coming to the top of my head. So I'm like, fuck, man.
Well, when Tone didn't pick it, that was your opening.
Any guesses?
Give us a hint. It's not the Fragile. We did that one already.
Not the 90s.
Not the 90s. Oh, okay. Your hints suck, bro.
I know.
Let me guess. It's heavy.
Yes.
I know. This is heavy therapy, Nate. Give me a little bit more, man.
I'm just going to say it.
Okay, just say it.
Yeah, because it's one we talk about. And again, I didn't want to pick this one because I was trying to go on the deeper side. And I was like, you know what? I'll progressively get into these deeper cuts because this one needs to be said, because it just top of mind. It just like, it just came up when I thought of, man, what do I use as a way to get through these times, or times of frustration or anger, or I don't know. It's almost like this music just like says it for us, and then we can just relax.
Can I take a guess?
Head PE.
No, man, good one though.
That's not a bad guess though. Right?
Saliva every 6 seconds.
I love that saliva has become a punching bag.
Of
Sorry,
course.
Josie.
Of course they are.
All right, Nate, what is it? Tell us.
Slipknot, Iowa.
Yep, I almost picked a Slipknot record.
I
I'm glad that one of us did.
Yeah, I couldn't resist it because it's so friggin' good.
Yep.
And it's just one of those weird things where like we were lucky enough that it came out when we needed it, when the music was pure and when the band was they're still amazing. They're still putting out amazing stuff. So their second album, Iowa, is just obviously anyone that knows Slipknot knows this may very well be their best album. I don't know. It's hard to say because it really depends on the day. But super friggin' heavy. I would listen to this. This was like a go-to album for me when I lived in New York City. I loved to listen. I was in a big metal phase when I lived in New York City. I had a buddy there that was in a metal band, and so there's nothing better. And the iPod had just come out, so there's nothing better than like getting on the MTA and like walking the streets of Manhattan, listening to straight up like some blaring lyrics by Corey Taylor and the gang at Slipknot with Iowa, and just like roaming the streets and high skyscrapers and so forth. But this album just really does it all. And so I don't know why, but this album just really helps with those tough times. And anytime you're just pissed off, it's just a straight up like pissed album. There's nothing positive about this album except for the fact that it helps you get through the times that you're super raged and just like, man, I'm fucking pissed off. And as we've gotten to know Corey Taylor as a musician and what he's capable of range-wise, vocally, songwriting-wise, and he's obviously an author now, an actor now. He does a little bit of everything. So to hear it coming from like kind of the roots. This is the third album from Slipknot, but just everything about it's just so friggin' good. Let's see.
Yeah, do you have any key tracks? What are your favorite songs?
Yeah, I was gonna say the Heretic album, anthem.
Heretic anthem, yeah.
Love that song, man. Sometimes I'll play it and then I'll play it again like right after because it's so freaking good. Everything Ends. I love that song too. I don't know. It's such a like everything sucks, everything's ending album. Like it's just like this album should have come out today kind of thing.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, and they were accessible then too. They were still playing like venues we could see them in there.
Have either of you read either of his books, any of his books?
I have not.
So I read Seven Deadly Sins, and there are a couple of chapters that totally explain why Iowa was the way it was, and why they were the way they were early on.
Was it
he had a pretty shitty
space?
upbringing? Yeah, he had a really shitty upbringing. So there's some. It was good to read it and gain an understanding for some of the lyrical content and the music and the anger that came behind some of those songs, like Left Behind, and it was the Heretic Anthem, stuff like that. So it was it's worth reading. He wrote another book about ghosts, which I kind of want to read, but I haven't gotten to yet. But the first one's good, Seven Deadly Sins.
Wow, yeah, I haven't checked those out, but they're obviously very big. But this album was 2001, right?
Yeah.
So we were in high school, and they were huge then, but for good reason, because this album's killer. And they just, they're from Iowa. This is named after the album Iowa. They're middle of nowhere, 9-piece band that just like slays, and still one of the best live bands you can see, I believe. I hate to make comparisons sometimes because it really doesn't make sense, but this would be probably like the Kiss for our generation in terms of like the makeup and just the overall like
showmanship. And
it's just a full-on production. I had never seen, I think before I'd seen Slipknot, I actually saw Kiss. It was the only thing I had seen that had like a full-on production like that. And then when I saw Slipknot, I was like, oh, cool, nice. It's sweet that I have something that I can say has a full-on production, because for a while I didn't really get it, and now I totally understand that's part of the show, and it's the full package. And I love this album. Disaster Piece is another key track that I really like too. But man, this album is just a banger. I think anyone that's a metalhead can agree that this is a pretty essential album to vent out to and just kind of, you know,
Yeah, definitely.
get through the pain.
I think they definitely check the box for this. And we'll do a Slipknot episode at some point, because for me, who's like, I do have pretty deep roots with metal.
Deep roots.
Deep roots, yeah. I mean, whether it's like old Obituary or Suffocation or, you name it. So I have context of bands that are, more metal purists really love that shit on Slipknot, but it's like, no, if you listen to this album in particular and self-titled, like, this has it all. It has blast beats. It has everything. Like, it's just, they did go a little more pop sensibility. Like, take Left Behind. I don't know if you guys know this, but there's a radio version of that song, just like they did with Wait and Bleed. So, like,
oh wow,
there's holes that people can poke in, but like, if you listen to this, if you put this album on and didn't tell anyone who it was, it would get a different reaction for the metal purists.
Yeah.
And the live show is so killer. I saw him for the first time, I think, last year. I took my dad down in Massachusetts, and it was a killer show. But yeah, bring it back to the segment here. Yeah, this is like, if you want to lift weights, listen to this album. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, they this was, and I think I've touched upon this in another episode. We were talking about going to shows and being converted to different types of music. This is kind of my gateway into some of that heavier stuff, being more open to going to see these bands live. And honestly, you go see a band live, especially a band that puts on a show like Slipknot does, you're going to be converted. Like, it's hard not to be. That the show that we saw, it was probably, I can't even remember. I want to say it was like it had to be at least 8 or 10 years ago, down in Mansfield, Nate, for what was the name of that festival? They had a bunch of bands with them. Mayhem, yeah, Mayhem Fest. So we went down to that, and you just needed somebody to go with you. It was just you, and it's like a 3-hour drive for us. So I'm like, yeah, I'll go. And I'm, hesitant and didn't want to really do it, but I was like, it's live music. I like music. I'm sure I'll find something I like. And just by the halfway through the set, I was like, holy shit, these guys fucking rip. And like the guitar, the drumming and the drummer going upside down, and it, like, just the stage presence for all of them. It wasn't just Corey. Corey's obviously got a huge stage presence, but just, you could look at any one of the 9 and see something crazy happening on stage, hitting a keg with a baseball bat, or just all kinds of amazing stuff happening, and fire. It's something to behold, and because they can do that, it turned me on to other stuff that I'm like, yeah, no, I'll give that a whirl. I'll try that. I'll listen to more things and not be so dismissive of stuff that maybe doesn't have the connotation that I'm looking for to start. It's worth opening up your ears and checking it out.
Yeah, I think it really brought to the forefront the fact that you can be in a metal band, scream, but also sing. Because Corey's got some melody in even these early albums. Of course, with Stone Sour and other bands, he even went more so that route. But I think that this kind of changed it, and that's maybe why they got onto radio or maybe signed to a major label, because he has those elements. So they knew that he was a strong frontman from the start, and that there was going to be some. I don't know how the metrics or how these things work internally for record labels, but they must have known, like, oh wow, this vocalist has something that maybe is going to allow them to go a little bit longer than 1 or 2 albums. So we should probably sign them for like a 7-album deal or something like that. I don't know, just kind of nerding out in that sense. But yeah, man, and Corey's influenced by Trent Reznor, so there's a lot of comparison there too. A lot of the stuff's coming full circle. When you mentioned the keg, clown hitting the keg with the baseball bat, it reminds me of Nomar Slevik. You know what I mean? That's a sound that everyone knows is like a keg sound, or if you drink, I guess. So they implement that into the music. There's literally 2 members in the band that just hit kegs.
And it's awesome.
Yeah. But you nailed it with like the heavy with the melody. So Left Behind, early on when you were just introducing this album, I was like, Left Behind could be the heaviest in parts, heaviest album song on this album, but it's also the most melodic. It just has it all. And I'm not talking about the radio version, because the radio version is a little more stripped down.
Yeah. Well, they had to be if they were going to get any sort of play that way. So, Iowa has some tough hangs as far as radio friendly is concerned. I think not that they're tough hangs, but you know what I mean.
Oh man, some of the lyrics are pretty dark.
I'd tell you, go back and read that book. It'll make even more sense.
Yeah, that's cool. Because I know he had a rough childhood. The what I have heard or read, it seems like him and Marshall Mathers have a similar upbringing. It was pretty like a broken home kind of situation.
Yep.
Which sucks, but lends itself to art like this and coming out the other side. It's awesome, and that's I think why I chose maybe Slipknot and Nine Inch Nails, because it's nice to have some success at the end of the tunnel, light at the end of the tunnel. Like, man, shit's tough. Life's hard. Life's like really fucking hard. So if you can get through it, and doesn't mean you have to be a multi-platinum recording artist to do it, but shit, man, music for us average people is pretty sweet to have this to help get through any difficult times. So yeah, Slipknot, Nine Inch Nails, all these bands. It's been real. Times are tough, but I feel happy. I feel super elated when I listen to Nine Inch Nails and Slipknot. I'm like, man, life's good. Life's great.
Well, you can find the positive in it, at least within the therapeutic release of it. And that was the goal of this